He was kind of scary looking, but he wasn't really all bad. I think he just craved a little affection, a sense of being loved and needed and wanted.
I felt sorry for guys packed into gyms, trying to look like how Calvin Klein or Tommy Hilfiger said they should. Is that what a man looks like?
And just about an hour ago, I got you fired.
What? So what did you do that for?
I figured that being my wife would take up all of your time.
Even if I wanted to say no, I couldn't. You're not supposed to say no to a detective.
I figured that, too.
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire you a lot, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
The world declared, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights.
Women are not even accepted as human beings. They are treated with injustice and inequality. Women are denied. They are neglected, even in the developed countries.
I am from Britain, and I think it is right that I am paid the same as my male counterparts. I think it is right that I should be able to make decisions about my own body.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. And the government will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. Now looking at his watch because apparently a woman's spoken too long.
So I think right now we have the chance to be heard, and that's why we're doing it.
Media representation is not just about entertainment. It molds how we see and interact with the world around us, shaping perceptions, stereotypes, ideas, and so much more that influence the way we, as a society, see and interact with the world. The narratives and images created by media of all kinds shape our perceptions of everything we interact with, and influence the internalization of stereotypes, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, ultimately guiding how we view those around us, especially leaders and public figures. How does gender representation in media, like film, television, print, and advertising, carry over into gender representation in politics? And why is understanding this unavoidable connection so crucial? Feminist theory can be described in many different ways. However, in the field of political science, it is described as a way of looking at the world in which women occupy from the perspective of the woman. Feminism's central focus is the concept of patriarchy, which oppresses women as well as other minorities through its social, political, and economic influence. Ultimately, feminism in political science and in media studies is both a critique of patriarchy and the oppressive forces that keep minorities lower, as well as an ideology that is committed to social and political equality and equity. In our discussion of how media representations shape our perceptions within politics, it is equally important to understand gender theory. Gender theory challenges the ideas of masculinity and femininity. This brings to light an important question. Are these masculine and feminine representations fixed biological structures? Instead of thinking of gender as black and white or binary, gender theory views femininity and masculinity as mutually socially constructed characteristics, shaped by societal norms and institutions, as well as individual interactions between members of society, opening up the discussion for multifaceted explanations of gender and gender representation in both politics and media. Finally, it is important to understand that this research and analysis are derived from a media studies perspective. Media studies is an interdisciplinary field that works to examine the context, history, and effects of various forms of media. This could include television, film, radio, print, social media, and more. This field of study explores how media shapes society, influences culture, and affects how people communicate and interact with each other in relation to media representations and the human experience. Historically, the media has often reinforced strict gender roles, following the binary of what we deem to be the idealistic version of male and female, portraying those black and white options as the blueprint for how we should act and interact within society. These tropes, being deeply rooted in patriarchal structures, have a significant impact on our social expectations.
Talk to you this morning about the way you look. Now, I've heard it said that we women attach too much importance to our appearance, but that isn't true. After all, the way we look exerts so much influence on the way we feel and on the way other people feel about us that it really is very important.
Sweet, the new Dazzle Dent way? Now, really?
It's true. I'll prove it to you. Well?
My faith in the integrity of American advertising is somewhat restored.
You see?
Laundry is not new. Your mother, your grandmother, her mother, they all did the laundry. Maybe even a man or two. And although a lot has changed,
media culture provides the material out of which we forge our very identities. In this context, specifically, what it means to be male and female. The media does this by using veiled and specific scripts about gender that teach us which social roles and personal characteristics should be considered acceptable and valuable.
To be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood, but always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged, so find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful.
Gender stereotypes assign fixed traits like decisiveness in men and nurturance in women, based solely upon one's gender. These stereotypes emerge from cultural norms and social roles that have historically divided labor and authority along gender lines. For women, this often results in a social script that reproduces the idea that they are inherently better at nurturance duties, like being a mother or a caregiver, quite opposite to the common portrayals of leaders, which are often shown conceptualized in images of strength, resilience, and with a lack of emotion and attachment.
And 3 times the grease per swipe. And who knows, that just might give you triple the time to relax. Like, say, a whole 3 or 4 seconds.
Housekeeping still remains the most important business of the world. It engages the hearts and minds of more people and calls for higher qualities than any other occupation. Each woman faces it single-handed.
Did you ever have to make a meal in 20 minutes, literally from the time you entered the kitchen until the meal was ready to serve? Well, Sally Gasco did once, when the schedule...
When we look closely, we see that media representations often produce harmful binaries. For women, this often manifests in idealized feminized features, thin, beautiful, and typically white, as well as timid, caring, nurturing, agreeable, sexy. Teaching us what social roles and personal characteristics are ideal to society. For men, the media often represents a stark binary opposition to femininity, emotionally vacant, oversexed, macho, aggressive leaders. It is important to recognize that all forms of media representation matter, because they structure both our public and personal lives. These representations, in a literal sense, mediate our relation to social institutions, framing the very nature of not only how we interact with media like TV, film, or advertising, but how we interact with and perceive each other every day. Research has consistently argued that women in politics are represented in gendered and sex stereotypical ways. For female politicians, their appearance, tone, and personal life are often under a magnifying glass, reinforcing media-driven, gender-based barriers. Despite making up slightly over half of the global population, women currently only make up just about a quarter of political representation worldwide. At the current rate, we are still 130 years away from achieving proportional gender representation in the highest positions of power. The journey for women in politics is a heroic journey marked by significant milestones, especially within the past 100 years. A journey just as difficult as inspiring. Looking at this climb from a historical vantage point shows just how far we have come, although the presence of such significant milestones highlights just how recent these victories are in the context of political history.
World to hear that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
The freedom not just to get by, but get ahead. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. We choose a future where no child lives in poverty.
I'll be a third term of President Obama.
Well, I think that's pretty obvious. I think being the first woman president would be quite a change from the presidents we've had up until...
Despite over a century of activism and the relatively recent push towards gender equality in the political world, the political arena remains overwhelmingly male-dominated. Globally, women hold about 27% of national legislative seats, and while we are seeing a steady incline, it is predicted that at our current rate, we could still be well over 50 years away from achieving gender parity in legislatures, and much longer for the highest positions of power like presidents or prime ministers. This underrepresentation has a real impact on the perceptions and policy. Women are often seen as less capable of leadership roles because of reinforced social stereotypes that tie women to representations like being too emotional, passive, or nurturing. And while these stereotypes are obvious over-exaggerations, the disproportionate representation of women in positions of power, like in politics, help frame the notion that we don't belong in these positions as much as men do, or that they are somehow less capable. Women also tend to champion different policy priorities, which male-dominated governments frequently neglect. To truly understand this disparity from a media-reinforced perspective, we have to look at the media and how it acts as a powerful gatekeeper that reinforces prominent gendered political barriers. The media's relationship to political representation spans far further than simply reporting on politics. It actively shapes the political images of candidates, based on not only their general characterizations, but also the underlying stereotypes that we, as a society, place onto individuals based on their outward-facing characteristics like gender.
Calm, she was charming, her hair looked, just to be cosmetic, her hair looked great, she looked great.
Which designers do you prefer?
What, designers of clothes?
Yeah.
Would you ever ask a man that question?
I would not.
I believe we actually have a split screen of the two women, and you can see there is a big difference between what Jackie Smith was wearing, although it's being covered by our, there we go.
Launched onto the national stage as a vice presidential candidate, and she gave it her all in every way that she possibly could. Was she limited? Potentially. But she was thrown out there, raked over the coals, and then became a media joke.
And by the
now,
way,
this is costing her.
No,
now
the
this
reason
is
people
costing
are
her.
both on both sides, just so for her and against her, and we're
Why
talking
can't
about this
we
off
simmer
camera.
down?
No, this is the first woman in power with sexual appeal.
When taking a look at the media and the powerful role it plays in shaping perceptions and often reinforcing existing gender barriers, it becomes much clearer how important media representation is, especially among marginalized populations. Women in politics face a tough double standard. They are often criticized if they seem traditionally feminine, being framed as weak or inexperienced. Conversely, when they show traits like assertiveness or strength, they are dismissed and labeled with characteristics like aggressive, unlikable, or simply too emotional.
My husband is not the Secretary of State. I am. So you ask my opinion, I will tell you my opinion. I'm not going to be channeling my husband.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Keep going. Let's keep going until every one of the 161 million women and girls across America has the opportunity she deserves to have.
Media coverage tends to focus more on surface-level aspects, such as appearance, clothing, or family life, rather than on qualifications or legislative ambitions. This issue becomes even more pronounced for women of color, who often receive less attention overall or find their leadership portrayed through negative racial and gender stereotypes, which can undermine their credibility.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
Men won't vote for Hillary Clinton because she reminds them of their nagging wives.
When Barack Obama speaks, men hear, take off for the future. And when Hillary Clinton speaks, men hear, take out the garbage.
These same tropes that we so often see in entertainment media, like the strong male leader or the overly emotional female, are recycled in political reporting, creating a feedback loop where voters internalize these stereotypes, bringing them into the voting booth thinking about candidates in a media-shaped stereotypical framework, rather than understanding and analyzing the candidate's policies or values. This becomes especially relevant in soft news coverage, where the focus shifts from policy to personal details. Female candidates are often judged more heavily on their appearance and personality rather than their qualifications or policies.
That goes into everything that Hillary Clinton does. For her to argue that she was not aware of what she was communicating by her dress is like Barry Bonds saying he thought he was rubbing down with flaxseed oil.
You all saw the famous photo from the weekend of Hillary looking so haggard and looking like 92 years old. If that's the face of experience, I think it's going to scare away a lot of those independent voters.
As promised, tonight's campaign comment and the issue of $150,000 being spent by the Republican National Committee so it could play vice presidential color forms with Sarah Palin and her family is, almost literally, window dressing. But even this saga of the would-be empress's new clothes does emphasize a point about the campaign worthy of deep consideration. $150,000 in clothes, Senator McCain? To make what might as well be an actress playing your running mate look more like a vice president, Senator McCain?
This continuous cycle of biased media representation doesn't just affect how we vote. It actively affects how we view everyone that we interact with, whether that is in a political context or otherwise. When potential candidates only see people who look like them being relentlessly scrutinized for their appearance, clothes, or their tone, while their male counterparts are assessed only on their competence, it sends a clear message. The system is not built for you to succeed on merit alone. It creates an almost unattainable barrier, limiting the diversity of voices and experiences we have in media representation and in government. Gender stereotypes in media shape our social expectations of all genders in all roles across our social landscape, reinforcing traditional norms about masculinity and femininity, influencing how individuals see themselves and others. We can't change these systems overnight, but we can change how we engage with them. Pay attention to how the media frames politicians. Ask yourself, is this politician being judged on their policy or in binary stereotypes that we have internalized as a Western society? By reflecting critically on our own media consumption and challenging the biases we see, we can work towards a future where a person's leadership is judged not by their gender, but by their character, their policies, and their ability to serve. Finally, for us, the viewers and voters, media literacy is our defense. We must critically seek to recognize when the narrative shifts from policy to personality, from qualifications to clothing. By actively rejecting these ingrained stereotypes in the voting booth, we may finally break the cycle to ensure that competence, not cliche, determines who leads us.